Welcome to Expats Listen with Ryan and Liz, the podcast where we share the ups and downs, the struggles and celebrations of living abroad.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Liz. Ryan, tell me, how has your week been?
I've had a great week. We're out in Ireland and learning a lot about this new culture and seeing a lot of green landscapes and beautiful oceans and spending a lot of time in the rain. But really, really enjoying it. Met some amazing Irish people, drank way too many Irish beers and whiskies, but really great experience. How's your week been?
Yeah, loving it. Been hiking a lot, which is always my happy place, and really enjoying chilling a bit more. I think on this road trip, we had been moving really quickly and trying to get as much done as possible very quickly. And now we're staying in each place for at least a week. We're able to catch up better on work. I feel a bit more settled. So yeah, I think it's been a good week.
Nice. I'm glad. What are we talking about this week?
So this week we are talking about our biggest expat mistakes. And don't worry, guys, I'm sure that this is not comprehensive in any way, shape, or form. There have been so many times and so many ways that we have messed up that we're just not thinking of right now. But these are some of our expat mistakes that we think are fun stories to share with you, because whenever something is really terrible in the moment, it always turns into a funny story, doesn't it?
Well, I think these are the things that have had enough time pass for us to consider them funny, because I think at the moment when we were dealing with this stuff, life was not good. So, it's taken a lot of time and energy and emotional investment for us to turn this into a funny story in life. But I'm glad we got there, and I'm looking forward to talking about them today for sure.
Amazing. Why don't we have you go first, Ryan? So what is one of your biggest expat mistakes?
It was so stupid because I just didn't think about it, and it ended up creating so much of a problem in my life.
For years.
So before I left South Africa to move to Portugal, I didn't do any real research on how driver's licenses work. So I didn't think about what I needed to take to Portugal with me, what type of process I needed to go through, what really needed to happen for me to be a legal and licensed driver in Portugal. And when you move to Portugal, one of the things that you need to do is surrender your old driver's license, which needs to be valid, and then swap it out to a Portuguese driver's license, which would allow you to be legal in the country, right? Now, unfortunately, because I'm an idiot and didn't think about anything, my driver's license from South Africa was actually due to expire basically a day before the cutoff date was for me to exchange my driver's license. So basically, I needed to get it done on a specific day. And if I didn't get it done on that day, I would have had to come back to South Africa, get a brand new driver's license, get that created, generated, and received, and then brought that to Portugal, and then to go through the whole process again. And even if I tried to do that at that stage, they were going through a whole lot of legal changes, which would have actually meant that I would have needed to have done my driver's license test again in Portuguese in Portugal months after having arrived. I would have had zero chance of ever actually having been a legal driver in Portugal. So long story short, we realized that this is what's going to happen, and we threw everything that we had into basically one trip to the IMT, which is the Portuguese license and vehicle department. And we went there and we explained the situation, and we said, look, this is what we've come to do. And in the great Portuguese tradition, the first answer was no, you can't do it. You'll have to come back tomorrow or the next day or never again. We just don't feel like helping you today.
Because back up for a second, because it wasn't just this one visit to the IMT. First, we needed to figure out what you needed in order to go to the IMT.
Oh, yes.
And there were so many visits to so many places.
I didn't know I needed to share my full trauma on this whole thing. So for you to go through with this process, you need to be registered with the Portuguese health system, which means that you need to get something called an SNS number, which is basically your registration to the public health system number. And in order for you to get that number, and I kid you not, you need to go to your local clinic or your local administration center, and you would need to arrive there at like 7:30 on a specific day in the week, which is never the same day week after week. You will need to sit there from 7:30 until 12:30.
No, until 4.
Until 4. I'm
4
sorry.
p.m.
I'm trying to make this better than it actually was. You will need to sit there until 4 p.m. And at 4 p.m., 8 people get given a SNS number. So only 4 people once a week get generated numbers for them to be a part of the Portuguese health system.
And it was so crazy because the security guard there is the one who told us all of this. We didn't even, it wasn't written anywhere. It wasn't like anyone who actually was supposed to be giving these numbers out had information on how to get one. It was the security guard who was like, here's the deal. You need to be here that Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. and you need to wait until 4 p.m. And that's just how it is. And we asked, do you remember? We were like, can we come at 7:30 a.m. and then leave and come back? And he was like, no. If you leave, you've surrendered your number in line. So you have to just sit here and stay. Bring a book.
Bring a book, bring snacks, bring something to do. And it was so amazing because it wasn't even something that anyone there thought was strange. Everyone just believed that, yes, this is quite a natural process to follow for you to get this SNS number. And the SNS number was a very big thing to get because you need it to access any kind of public health service for all of the time that you're in Portugal. So it's not just for driver's licenses. It's if you get sick, if you need any kind of medical attention at all, you need that number. So we needed to get that. And the reason why we needed to get that was because of item number 37 on the, what do you call this? The treasure hunt for getting a driver's license is that you need to get examined by a licensed GP or doctor, which you can obviously only go and get if you've got that SNS number.
Yeah.
So we got the SNS number. We got the SNS number after waiting the full day and fighting to get that number. It was given to us. We were very grateful. We went home in the dark and looked at our SNS numbers with great pride. And then we went to a very specific doctor that was supposed to be the guy who we needed to see for this particular request. We went to go see that man. He was a wonderful guy. We actually got along very well.
He actually was really cool.
Really nice guy. I mean, it's been so many years and I still remember him being a really nice guy. And he tested my eyes. He made sure that I wasn't suffering from any real psychosis or anything like that, so that I could commandeer a vehicle. And he gave me the all clear. And that was actually the first thing that was ever put on my health profile in Portugal. Then we got that sorted out. Then we needed to now go back to the IMT to ask them to give me my new driver's license. And when we went there, again, the first answer is, no, this is too complicated. You're going to need to come back on another day. We can't do this. But I could not come back on another day because
Your license would be expired.
The following day, at midnight that night, my driver's license would have expired, which would have put everything scratched, null and void. And I had no chance. And you know what? Maybe I don't give enough credit for this, but there was one man, really Mariah Carey said it best. Then a hero comes along and gives you the strength to carry on. This man came through and, he was just, we're going to make a plan for you, my friend. Let's get this thing done. And really, he went to each person in the administrative line of this person needs to do that and that person needs to do that. He went to each one of them and said, this is what you need to do so this can work.
We were at that counter with that man for over 2 hours.
I don't know why he had chosen to actually help us the way that he did, because it's not as if we had any kind of connection or anything like that. I think he might have just seen the desperation in our eyes.
We were very desperate.
We were very desperate, and we had zero power at that point. And I think he knew that, and maybe it was just every sympathetic bone in his body really wanted to be there for us, and he was. And he pushed that application forward. Everything was legit, but I know that it wouldn't have happened that day if I didn't get that help from that man. And yeah, and it went through. And I wish, dear listeners, that was the end of that saga. Very shortly afterwards, I was given a fantastic, shiny new driver's license from Portugal. That's not what happened, because the wrong address and the wrong timing was given to the department. And it took 2 years for that driver's license to actually find its way to my pocket. In those 2 years, I actually managed to go back to South Africa and apply for another driver's license, which I used from 6 months after that, so that I could actually just drive a car. I went to the US for a wedding for one of Liz's best friends, Alicia. And I remember wanting to go to Taco Bell and not being able to go to Taco Bell because I wasn't a licensed driver. And it was so embarrassing to think that I needed to ask people to give me a ride to go do things. But that was the way that it was. And coming back to it is that really it was such a stupid mistake to make, because that's kind of a big part of life. Being able to drive a car wherever you might be is actually really an empowering thing, an important thing to be able to do. I think what makes it even worse was the stupidity of, I went to the AA. I don't know if anyone out there knows about the AA. It's the Automobiles Association, and they claim to have some kind of sway on international driving and policy. And I went to them and I said, listen, I'm moving to Portugal. Is there anything that you can give me that I can use so that I can drive out there? So this lady says, yes, you can get an international driver's permit. So I said, that sounds like something I could use internationally to drive. And it was this very fancy but cardboard little booklet that had a big stamp in it that said, this man has a driver's license in South Africa.
That you paid for.
That I paid for. And then I arrived in Portugal and they looked at that and said, we've never seen anything like this. It is worth nothing. There is no place or use for this anywhere on mainland Europe. So I don't know what you want us to do with this, but it's not a driver's license and you need to get your driver's license converted.
But the problem was just that you didn't get it renewed. Like if you had renewed your South African driver's license before you came, let's say you had like 3 years on it, then we wouldn't have been in that situation of desperation of, please, can you do this today?
I think you're right. Because obviously it would have just been me annoying police officers if and when they check my license, saying you should have swapped this out. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was, I would like to say that it was an innocent mistake, because I think it was more a slip of mind and maybe a lack of consideration for that part of life.
Of course, it's something you don't think about. I mean, how many of us have had a passport expire just because you didn't think about the date and you didn't realize, and oh, now it's expired. I need to hustle and get a new one right away.
And I think you're also psyched out so much more, because that was one of the first big administrative stresses I had.
Exactly.
When I had moved here, and everyone around me is speaking deep Portuguese, administrative Portuguese, and I don't know anything. And, to be in that situation was really a tough place to be. And definitely, I think, maybe even a good lesson to understand how Portuguese bureaucracy works. So that was my first mistake. What was one of your biggest mistakes, Liz?
Well, I guess we'll go in chronological order for mine. So one of my first big mistakes was when I first moved to Sydney, Australia, back in 2010, and I arrived on a working holiday visa. And in my mind, I was going to arrive on this working holiday visa where I could get a job and I'd get a waitressing job. And it would be so easy because in New York I had done waitressing and I never actually applied for a waitressing job that I didn't get in New York. You basically like walk in and you're like, hey, I'd like to start waitressing.
It's one of those jobs you assume is a guarantee at some point. You can just ask like 5 restaurants, you're going to get a yes from at least 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think with experience, especially I thought like New York experience, it shows that it's been like a fast-paced environment. I should be able to get a waitressing job without any problem. Let me tell you, I was going to restaurants. I was walking to like 20 restaurants a day, handing out CVs, my resume, and saying anything. And everyone said no to me.
Did they say no directly? Was it like straight up no?
It was a mix. So some were a straight up no, we're not hiring. Some were, we'll take your resume and then they will never call you back. And some were, yeah. And then you're like, can I give you my resume? And they're like, And it was like, what? I really felt crazy because I must have applied to over 100 restaurants.
Is that how it works though? I mean, in New York and Australia, I guess. In South Africa, in my experience, this is 100 years ago when I was young, it was an introduction to the restaurant manager. So you arrive and you're like, hey, everyone. Hey, sir, ma'am, I would like to apply for a job to be a waiter here.
Yep.
And then the little manager person will say, okay, let me go to the big manager.
Sure.
And then the big manager will come out from the back and say, oh, are you looking for a waiting staff spot?
Yep.
And then they'd have like a short conversation with you and then it'll be done.
That is exactly how it happened in New York.
But nowhere else, but not in Australia.
I never got a single conversation with the big manager in Australia. Not once.
Did your CV make it to the big manager?
Probably not. I never got a call back. Not one single call back. And I was hustling. Like I was really going to lots of restaurants, like shaking hands, even restaurants that said like help wanted in the sign on the front. And no one wanted me to be a waitress.
Wow. What do you think caused that?
Honestly, I just think that there are so many 20-something-year-olds in Australia looking for waitressing jobs that when it's help wanted, I think they fill that job within minutes. And I think they just didn't take the sign down. I think they're probably getting tons of people applying for each job. I think it's just a flooded market.
Wow. I'm shocked to hear that. Even if it's a no, I would have expected there to have been a conversation saying, look, we just don't have space now. You know,
Some of them I had a conversation.
Okay.
Some of them told me no and said like, we're not hiring right now.
But your numbers though should have meant you would have gotten an offer, some offers, just in terms of the number of applications you threw out there.
I thought so. And really, I think it was just me not knowing and not asking anyone. Like I didn't know anyone who had ever gone to Australia and gotten a waitressing job before. I didn't know anyone who had tried.
So you spent a lot of time in Australia. In retrospect, did people say that getting a waitressing job was hard?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Like,
so
yes.
So it's notoriously difficult. I don't know
if it still is because at that time, so this was over 10 years ago now that I was in that position, but over 10 years ago, it was really difficult. And most of my friends that were looking for those kinds of jobs ended up getting cleaning jobs instead because those were a lot easier to get.
Okay. So it was something in the service industry for young people who were there on working holiday visas.
Yeah, like waitressing was like a promotion.
Okay.
So it was, you didn't just go into a restaurant and start waitressing. Like they didn't hire you for that. They would hire you for like a cleaning job and then maybe you could work up to being a waitress.
Okay. So that's in very much opposition to our previous experience of this is where you start.
Exactly, because I was 16 when I was waitressing in New York. Okay. I walked in, I was like, hello, my name is Liz. I'd like to be a waitress now. And yeah, exactly. Like they talked to the manager, they brought him out. We had a little conversation and then there I went on my merry way. I got my little apron and I really loved waitressing.
Yeah, I remember needing to do the test on the menu. Do you remember everything that we served? Do you remember all the little tricks and little bits and pieces so that if anyone asks you anything, you've got an answer? And once you've got that sorted out, you're on your way. You get your little uniform, you get your little apron, and you're moving, you know?
Well, thank goodness they didn't do that in New York, because my first waitressing job was actually at a diner where there are like hundreds of items on the menu. So I'm really glad I wasn't tested on the menu. I would have failed. But yeah, I think honestly, like the mistake that I made there was just having ridiculous confidence that it would be in Australia the way that it was in New York, because why wouldn't it? And I had no thought that maybe this could be different, and maybe it would actually be difficult to get a job. Maybe it would take more time. And I think the longer it takes you to get a job, the more stressed you feel, because I was running out of money. And every day that I wasn't getting calls back was another day that I was spending money on accommodation and spending money on food and making nothing. So I was really hustling.
You know, you say that and it just makes me think about the pressure of being that young and thinking about the price of food and how much you could eat on any given day, and there being this deadline of this is how long I can stay in this place before I have zero money. Like living that close to the edge, really, even now, it like shakes me, you know? So I can understand how you would have felt at that stage. Wow. Okay.
All right, Ryan, what's next for you? Give us another expat mistake.
Oh, I'm so sad to talk about this next one because I feel so much shame in what it is that happened. And I think maybe I'm only recently comfortable enough to talk about this experience in my life. So I was a young man wanting to build a new and exciting life, see new countries, experience new things. And I had a roommate at the time who had just gotten a job in Dubai. And at that stage in time, a job in Dubai was a really big deal. I guess it might still be. I'm just not in that career space anymore. But going to Dubai at that point was a big deal. And so I was inspired and I started applying for jobs in Dubai. And at that point in my life, for some reason, I was entirely convinced that the calling for me was to be an HR executive. And I don't know why I thought that was the coolest thing ever, but that was what I wanted to do at that stage. And so I applied for this job as an HR.
But I guess it fits. I think like you get to help people. I could see you as an HR.
Yeah, you know, I mean, at some point, you know, you have to have some type of compromise between your real interests and what you can offer to a company.
Yeah.
And I think HR often does that for people who have an attraction to helping other people. So that's probably one of the best places you can be in a company to do that, you know. So that's probably one of the things that really motivated me behind it, to say, is this the way for me to connect with people in a corporate environment? HR, big tech.
All right. So HR in Dubai, you were ready.
So I'm ready, man. This is going to be the big step forward. I'm on my way. I'm breaking out of South Africa. I'm going international. I'm ready.
How old were you at this point?
Yeah, I must have been. You're asking me a question here now, Lizzie. I think that was 2008, maybe around 2008. So how old would that have made me?
23, 22, 23.
22, 23 years old. So I'm on my way now. I go to the airport. My mom is crying and saying, I love you, Ryan. I hope this life is good for you. I'm like, yes, me too.
And you've told everyone you're moving to Dubai.
I'm on my way. The plane ticket. I'm getting on the airplane. Like it's happening, right? But it's contingent on my final interview at this company. It's a printing company. I don't even remember the name of the company. And I jump on the plane and I'm on my way. And back then, the Emirates airline used to provide filet mignon, like the
You
old.
thought who you were.
The old days. I mean, no, I wasn't sitting there feeling like a baller, but I was feeling like I've left and I'm starting this new thing. So anything that's part of this new experience is going to be part of my new life. And it's really mind-blowing to me because it's just exciting, I guess. It's not as if I feel I deserve filet mignon, but I felt very grateful to have it. But anyway, so arrive in Dubai and have the interview set up. Everything's ready. I'm psyched to get started. I arrived there and this dude who was responsible for speaking to me, man, he couldn't have been anywhere near anything senior in this company. Really, they called me into this very dimly lit, prefabricated building with air conditioning that was barely hanging on in Dubai. And he sits me down and he says, "Oh, it's good to have you here, but there isn't any HR space available. If you want, you can be a sales rep."
What?
And I had literally just left a sales position because I hated it so much.
And you paid so much to get to Dubai.
Everything that I had went into that plane ticket, into that trip, into whatever it is that was going to happen after that. And there I was, and this really strange guy is saying to me, "No, this isn't even a thing. Like, we don't even know what we would want you to do, really."
Oh.
And I looked at it and you're sitting there. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's listening to this can relate it to some moment in their life where it's this massive, huge moment that is going to change the course of your life, and it's happening to you in that moment, and you're looking at it and
it's like slow motion.
Absolutely slow motion. And the guy who was telling me all of this too, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think he realized how pivotal this moment in my life was. I think he was looking at me and being very understanding that everything around me was just breaking down, like the final scene of Fight Club. Those buildings are falling in the background. That was what was happening to my life at that moment. I remember looking at him and thinking, I don't know what to do. And it was really strange because I did, at that point in time, you're going to try and make lemonade as well as you can. So I'm sitting there thinking, maybe I should become a sales rep here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are your choices?
And just get this thing done. But then I'm sitting and I'm also thinking, sales rep jobs, especially in those days, it might still be that way. I haven't needed to be a salesperson for a while now. But it was almost always like 100% sales commission.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're not going to make anything if you don't sell anything, and that is it. And this is at a printing company in
in a market you don't know.
In a place that I've never met anyone. I know no one. And also, I don't know if things have changed since then, but you're also committed to a work deal because they have specific commitments they need to make to you. You have commitments you need to make to them. So if you say yes, you're in this. You're in this for at least a year. That's going to be your life for at least a year.
And you cannot get out.
And you can't get out. I mean, you could get out, but it would require you to have money that I just didn't have. Especially, I wouldn't have any more money if I was a crap salesperson too, which is highly likely. So I'm still sitting there in this office just realizing that this is just not going to work. And if anyone is interested, my master plan to deal with this was to get onto another aeroplane to India because the plane fare was really cheap, and ended up in India for months.
Like backpacking
and just living generally like a homeless person until eventually certain things transpired in my life for me to get money for me to go back to South Africa and start over again. So I just, I'm so glad this is out there. I'm sure we'll get to this point and we'll talk about it more. But a lot of people, including me, I've just bared all my shame to you, is that this happens, eh?
Yeah.
You go out there with the best intentions, with the best laid plans, and life just doesn't work that way.
And especially when you're younger, and especially when you know someone else who had done it, and this seems like the same thing that they did, right?
It's so smooth for so many people. And I don't know how smooth it really is, but the story of, they called me and they wanted me desperately. The package was so much more than I ever thought it was going to be. I didn't know they would give me so much responsibility. I didn't know they were going to give me a massive housing allowance and a free car.
And then you show up and they take your passport away.
Well, I'm turning up there waiting to hear this, and they're like, there isn't a job, pal. So I'm just saying that happens, I think, a lot more than most people would ever really admit. And I think that this kind of stuff happens, and I could understand why you would never tell a single soul about this, because of how traumatic it was, and therefore something really embarrassing and shameful.
I'm so glad that you're able to share that now, and that you are able to see it as a bit of a funny story, even if it isn't haha hilarious. It's definitely something that you learned from and you grew from and is a part of your story.
I don't know. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that it's, you could laugh at it, and I think it would be okay to laugh at it. And I don't think of it as being something deeply serious or shameful anymore. But I think that it's such an important thing to have happened to me in my life, because of so many other things that happened as a result of that.
Yeah.
That was the first time that I had ever left South Africa to go somewhere else and needed to survive internationally. Surviving internationally is something, maybe we'll have a podcast episode about this one day, but surviving overseas is really an incredible thing for people to go through, because one of the important things that happens when you do that is you realize that you can get through it and you're going to be okay.
Especially when you're alone. Because when you do it alone and you weren't relying on anyone else and you did get through it and you were okay, exactly what you're saying, it makes you realize that you're tougher than you maybe thought.
There's no other way for you to find out whether or not you can survive other than actually going and surviving. And you get close. I mean, you were talking about working out how much money you needed to have every day for food. And I was there needing to figure out how long I can get this done. I got to the stage where my mom needed to send me 80 Rand. 80 Rand in these days is like $4.
Yeah.
And that $4, it was the difference between me sleeping on the side of the road and catching a bus across India to a place where I had a bed to sleep in.
Wow.
And, that's not to say, obviously I have to be very open about saying that I needed other people to help me to survive.
Yeah.
And that's something that I need to acknowledge. But I would have never been in that situation if I didn't put myself in that situation, as crazy as it might sound. What is your next mistake, Lizzie?
Oof. Well, my next mistake is a bit of a paperwork mistake. So when I moved to Kenya, I arrived to Kenya on a tourist visa, and that gave you 3 months. And then when I was going to stay longer, and I was actually doing some work and figuring out life in Kenya, I needed to renew my visa. And in Kenya, there is a person for everything who will tell you how easy it is. And don't worry, I'll get that sorted for you. And it's just this small fee. And I've done this hundreds of times, thousands of times before. And you can trust me and it'll all be fine. And just give me your passport and don't worry. And I trusted. And I gave a man on a motorbike my passport. And he took it to some office. And he got some stamp on it. Was it an actual visa?
A visa.
No.
A visa. Like, this is what allows you to be in this country.
But I didn't think anything of it because it was like, okay, and like here it is, and now here there's a stamp in my passport and it looks like a visa, and I thought everything was fine, and I paid the man and I went on my merry way and I continued living in Kenya. And why would I question that?
Yeah, it wasn't like any police officers were jumping through your window because this is illegal.
No.
No alarm bells were rung.
I thought I did everything by the book. I thought I was fully legal. Then I'm leaving Kenya and flying back to the US, and I give my passport at the airport, and she's like, "What is this fake visa?"
What was that moment like?
I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought maybe like this is a bad joke, or like, what is she saying? Because this is my visa.
Fake visa.
What is this fake visa?
That is terrifying. Like, my blood is running cold now.
It was pretty terrifying. And then, I don't know, she went from questioning, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, what's going on? Like, this is my visa. And then she got mad, and she was just like, the word for foreigners in Kenya is mzungus. And she was like, you mzungus, you come here, you think you can just do whatever you want, and you can stay as long as you want. We have rules. You need to follow them. Like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, oh no, I have no idea what I did. I have no idea what I didn't do. I have no idea what this sticker in my passport is. And now, like, what does that mean for other countries? Like, can I even leave? Am I going to ever be able to come back? What is going on? I was freaking out. It was not good. But obviously all of this is happening in seconds, right? Like, you need to control your face. You need to be super nice, super apologetic. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Oh no. Like, please tell me, what are the rules? I started crying. Like, really, I would never break the rules on purpose. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I think this is one of the things that's fascinating about international life, where you know that because you sometimes live a little bit closer to the edge of risk, when you're moving to different places, when you're in less developed countries, that kind of stuff, you accept that as being a risk that you're facing. But then on the other side of that risk is the transgression of international laws.
Oh, for sure.
And dealing with law enforcement in certain airports where men are carrying massive rifles and pulling people into dark corners. And at that point in time, I have zero courage. I am not a cool man when I am being questioned by security, because I work really hard to never live a life that requires security or anything. And if I somehow find myself in a situation where I'm having that conversation, I am terrified.
Oh, for sure. And luckily for me in this situation, my white girl privilege and my crying and my severe, please, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She was like, when are you coming back to Kenya? And I was like, I'm not sure. And she was like, is it in the next 6 months? And I was like, no, I don't have plans to come back in the next 6 months. And she was like, fine, just go. And she stamped my passport and let me through, which was so lucky. So yeah, I was incredibly lucky. I think that when I got to the other side through immigration, I just let out this sigh of relief and really had no idea what could have happened. And I think that's the scariest part of it, is, you know, that could have gone in so many different ways. And the fact that it was just a few minutes of someone being upset and asking what was going on and why was I doing this, in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing.
It's nothing.
But it was a huge mistake for me to trust a visa renewal with someone that I didn't know and just showed up on a motorbike. And I really, really, like, looking back at that, I was a fool.
So do you think that him just showing up out of nowhere and being on a motorbike was enough to have sparked suspicion if you were more vigilant?
I think that when it comes to a passport and a visa, you need to do it yourself. And I think that whatever the service that I trusted was of, oh no, we'll just pick up your passport, we'll take it to the office, it'll just be gone and we'll handle it all for you. I think that really I should have asked what office.
I think that's definitely a red flag and an alarm bell for me. And I feel that today, I don't know, I have this assumption that people are less fraudulent and scammy, but they aren't. But the second someone says, I need your passport, I'm immediately thinking, man, I'm in a vulnerable position right now.
It is, but of course they need your passport to get a visa, right? So they're going to take your passport.
Absolutely. There needs to be some element of you trusting someone, even if it is for a split second, if you were to hand it over across to a desk where someone stamps it.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, I don't know if anyone remembers these days of travel. I don't think they do it anymore because I've never had to do it maybe for the last 15 years, 20 years. But there was a time where if you stayed in a hotel, they would take your passport from you and lock it in their safe.
Yes, I do remember.
Do you remember they used to do that?
I hated that.
It was so creepy because I just thought so many things could potentially happen.
And not just hotels, hostels. And I would be paying $4 a night to stay at this hostel,
and they've got your passport.
Yeah.
No, it's huge. So those kinds of things I think are really too much for me. Even now, when someone requests my passport, sometimes you have to pay these silly tourism tax payments and stuff. They have to take your documents, and my passport is away from me for 4 minutes while this person takes a photo. The 4 minutes I'm stressing, and then going on, I'm thinking that person took a photograph of my passport. I wonder how they could use that to trash my life, I think this goes a long way to show how optimistic Liz can be. So,
it's true. I really didn't think anything bad could happen. It would all be great.
Well, in retrospect, nothing bad did happen.
It's true.
You got through it. You got through the customs and immigration line, and here you are to tell the story.
But I'm very quick to call it a travel mistake.
It wasn't your finest moment, but you made it.
All right, Ryan, what is your third expat mistake?
I feel as though I'm spending too much time talking about navigating Portuguese bureaucracy because, again, it's the same thing. So in Portugal, I don't know if it's still this way, but I suspect it is. You need to open something called an activity on your profile on the finance website and system for you to work. For you to work for yourself, right? So you open up this activity and you say, I'm going to be, in my case, it was an IT consultant. You do your IT consulting, you're taxed in a specific way. You need to provide certain documentation so that your tax can be processed and you can move on with your life. When that contract or when that activity is over, you need to close that activity on your online finance profile. If you don't, all it does is it appears as if you're continuing to work with a varying amount of tax, which means that you need to supply the correct information for that taxation to happen. I completed a very long contract and I didn't close the activity. And I didn't earn any money in that particular month from this particular contract. And so what ended up happening was, because it still looked like I had turned up for work for that particular month, yet earned no money, I needed to supply the right documentation to say, hey, everyone, I didn't earn any money this month from this work, so here's what I need you to know, and therefore I would get taxed $0.
Yeah, so basically, in a month where you earned €5, you would be taxed €1. In a month where you earned €10, you'd be taxed €2. And then this month you earned €0.
Yep.
So you would be taxed €0.
Absolutely.
But you never submitted paperwork to say, I earned €0, so I owe €0.
Exactly, because I'm thinking, hey man, I own nothing, so there's no reason for you to tax me anything. So I'm just going to move on with my life. I'll close it when I log on again. You know, when I've got some time at the internet cafe or something, I'll go onto the finance website and close that activity.
The internet cafe? What was this happening in like 2002?
I'm just joking, but that's really what it is that I was thinking. I thought it was such a minor thing.
Yeah.
And I moved on with my life, and then bang, here comes a letter from the Portuguese finance department, the IRS of Portugal, saying, sir, you didn't say anything about your tax in this particular month. You owe us €80.
The fact that you made €0 and owed €0, but didn't put that into the system, you had a fine of €80.
So I had to pay €80 because of that mistake. And I think that's one of the most painful things to make as a payment, because you know that it's not money that you should have had to pay. It could have been €5 that I would have needed to pay as this penalty, and it would probably have hurt as much because I knew that it was a mistake. I knew that I didn't owe anyone any money other than for being an idiot. And that is what hurts the most. There is a financial amount associated to my silliness.
But I wouldn't say idiot. I really wouldn't. I think that this is such a great example of you don't know what you don't know. When you move to a new country, there are so many different rules and you will never know all of them. And you're just kind of going along with the ones that apply to you right now and hoping for the best. And really, I think that it would have been impossible for you to know everything. Should you have asked someone when you opened the activity what else you needed to do in order to have the activity? Yeah, maybe. But I wouldn't say you're an idiot for not knowing.
No.
How would you have known?
I think that's the thing, is it maybe like looking at a bigger picture is understanding just how much of an impact bureaucracy specifically can have on a person's life as they go through this experience. Because people will often say, oh, you know what, like Italy, I know, is notorious for a brutal bureaucracy system.
Yeah.
And a lot of people struggle with it. And when people respond to that information, they say, oh, so you mean it's just a lot of forms and a lot of systems that you need to sign up for and deal with? And yes, that's one part of it. But understanding how those systems and how those processes work inside is actually where a lot of the pain and difficulty is from. We had a letter come through from the finance division a couple of months ago, and we didn't know what we needed to pay.
Yeah.
Because it was so complicated. The person who helped us, which was a young Portuguese lady, needed to check specifically on the government website because she herself had never seen that tax item before.
Yeah, and it wasn't anything crazy. It was our car.
It was nothing.
For our car registration.
It was almost entirely administrative. But the whole point is that we couldn't pay that because we didn't know what that tax was for.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to do this calculation yourself. And if you do the calculation wrong, then you're going to pay some crazy fine. So it's this multi-layered system of you need to know this and then you need to know that. And if you get it wrong, you're going to pay.
There's so many things. There's so many things underneath it all which you are supposed to know. Anyway, Liz, your last big mistake.
Well, my last big expat mistake was believing that bringing my new boyfriend to a country that I had visited once and he had never been to would be so easy. He would just adapt immediately. Everything would be so smooth. We wouldn't need to put any work in. It would just be so easy. Ryan, as that boyfriend at the time, how did it go?
The size of my bald spot has increased at a rate and to an extent which I never imagined. I have aged over the last 8 years in my time in Portugal. I have discovered new parts of myself which I never knew could get as stressed as they have. I've discovered the depths that anxiety can take you, but I'm glad I did it.
But I think this is the thing. The mistake that I made was underestimating just how hard it is to move abroad, because it had been a while for me and I had lived in so many different countries at that point that I just really think I forgot how hard it was. We were talking, my first big mistake when I was in Sydney and I was desperate to get a job in order to make money to survive today. That felt like a different lifetime almost. And the struggles that I faced when I first moved abroad felt so distant when I met you. And when I was thinking about moving to Portugal, it was just another country. And moving to Portugal for me was really a lot easier than moving to Portugal was for you.
Well, I think that it's a bit more complicated, I feel, right? So there's two things that stand out for me, right? The first thing is how sort of streetwise and educated you are in the ways of adapting to new countries and places.
Because of experience.
Because of experience. I think that you've done this for a long time, and I think that like you're really good at it, and it's absolutely a full-on compliment, because I think that it's a skill, it's a personality type, it's a perspective, it's an attitude. There's so much of it that you need for you to be able to move among different countries and people and places and customs and cultures. It's a big thing, and I think that you're very good at it from this experience and inherent things that are part of your personality. I think the other thing is that we talked to Ryan Brock a couple of weeks ago in one of our previous podcast episodes about him moving to London.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stood out there for me was, in a respectful way, how much easier it is to move to London, where everyone speaks the same language, where systems are similar, where you might have a big community that you're plugging into of people that you already know.
Totally.
And so that makes it easier too. So for me, going to Portugal, it was not having the skills to adapt to a new country to the extent where I could actually live holistically and in an integrated way, and moving to a country where people don't speak my language at all. And at that stage, expats and immigrants were still finding a place in the bigger cultural bubble.
Yeah.
And
so you didn't have the skills, the language, or the community.
Exactly. And it was really a big thing for me. And I don't, I think a lot of people might look at this and say, well, you could have done things differently. And that might be true and that might be correct. But I do feel as though I was in a bad space and place for me to make that transition at that stage. And I'll even go so far as to say maybe things would have been better if I had a better attitude. I don't think I had a bad attitude, but I didn't know what the correct attitude and perspective was for me to make this work in the way that I needed it to work. And I was just sort of overwhelmed and bowled over in short,
And my mistake was being so confused as to why you were overwhelmed and bowled over and what's going on. Why is this so difficult for you? I am here and we're doing this and here we go and let's keep moving, and you're struggling.
Yeah, it's a heavy thing to unpack, right? Because you've got so many different people who deal with these things in so many different ways. And I remember one of the things that I really tried hard to do was to plug into expat meetups and meeting with people who were supposedly in similar situations to myself, and discovering at those meetups and in those interactions that so many of those people were very poorly equipped to deal with the things themselves.
It's true.
And so you're sitting there talking to someone across the table from you about how this has been a massive change in your life and that you're feeling out of your depth and you're struggling. And their response is they're going through exactly the same thing, but they're going to deal with it by denying that this is happening at all.
Exactly. Pretending that everything is amazing.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there being like, dude, how are you dealing with not having any work? Because that's a big deal. That's a big part of life. And they're like, no, I've got 1,000 prospective clients and I expect them all to call me tomorrow. So I'm not even stressing. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I am stressed about where I'm going to get money for my next beer. And this guy's in exactly the same situation as me and is not worried about anything. And all I'm saying, I guess, is just that this is a very big move to make for so many people. So you're saying that it was a mistake, and I don't think that it was a mistake. I think that it was something that we needed to do, and I think that if there was a mistake there, it was maybe in forgetting what moving to a new country entails.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the mistake. Believing that it would be so easy, forgetting that it's actually quite difficult and requires a bit of work. I think that my mistake was having these rose-colored glasses that I've done it once and look, here I am. I survived, so he'll be fine. Yeah. It's not going to take much. Everything will be so easy. That was my mistake. It wasn't coming. I think coming was a good choice for us. But I think that my rose-colored glasses belief that everything would be so easy was a mistake, because in hindsight, if I had prepared you better and said, like, this is going to be...
I don't think that would have helped me, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah, I don't mean it I don't mean it to mitigate any of those concerns, but I'm just saying, I think that this is something you need to go through pretty much wherever it is that you're going to go. And the next place that we live, if and whenever that might be, I would need to go through basically the same challenges, but I think I would have a better resource pool within myself.
Because you built up the skills now.
Because I've been through it and I've got that experience of understanding this is what I might need to do in the next place for me to not go through the same struggles that I went through the first time.
Yeah, I guess that's very true. I think that you can tell someone how to swim and go through in words exactly what's required in order to swim, throw them in water and it's a different game. And I guess that's what it is for moving abroad. And once you know how to swim, once you know how to live abroad, you don't really remember what it was like to not know.
Yeah, I mean, I make the assumption that wherever the next place is going to include some pretty gnarly bureaucracy and difficulty finding social groups where I can fit in. I look forward to struggling with racial profiling because that's part of life. And the thing, though, is that that's not going to change.
Yeah.
I have changed, though, and I need to figure out a way to put those lessons into play so that I can live a better life, you know?
All right, let's hear from another expat. So this is Nina. She is originally from Serbia and now living in Portugal.
When I think about things that I could have done differently when I moved to Portugal, one thing comes to mind, and it has a lot to do with my personality as well. It's this need to really fit in. But I, in my defense, I was younger, 25, when I got here, and I really wanted to walk and talk like them. And I'm not talking about learning the language, because that's a must, obviously, but more like embracing their culture and way of being 100%. And it took me years to realize that by doing that, I was maybe sacrificing a little bit of my own way of being and parts of my culture. A small thing that comes to mind is having lunch at noon. I never had lunch at noon before coming to Portugal, and then all of a sudden I was trying to be hungry at 1 p.m., you know, because all the colleagues would take a break at that time. It's scheduled, you know. And of course, when you go to a restaurant, you have to accept the fact that if you show up at 2:30, you will be sent home, most probably. But I'm talking about me trying to implement this in my own house, you know. After some years, I finally gave up. But after some years, Another thing is trying to conduct a small talk, to talk like them, to do the stuff that everyone does here. Just for a bit of context, I come from the Eastern Europe, and we don't do small talk. It's actually very painful to sweat through the pattern of conversation. So yeah, also after some years, I've given up. I don't do it anymore. I don't even try. The best I can do is now tudo bem, and adeus.
I love that she said this. So this is something that we actually talked about doing a full episode on, and still might. The idea that Nina had, that Ryan had, that I had, that I think almost all of us have at some point moving abroad, is that if you try hard enough, you'll be just like them. I will never be Portuguese. I will never be Australian. I will never be South African. I will never be Irish. I will never be anything else because I'm not. And the more that I try to be like them, the more that I try to be Portuguese in Portugal, the more that I feel like I'm wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small.
And it's okay. It's okay. It's not saying that you aren't trying to integrate.
Yeah.
It's not saying that you don't respect, care for, and love the culture. It's not saying that you don't respect the people. It's not saying that you don't love being there.
Of course.
It doesn't say any of those things. It's just accepting the fact that your path in life, who you are as a person, is not the same as the people who went through all the same stuff in that place. And I think that's one of the things that I really struggle with when I try to find people to relate to about my struggles as an expat. There are a lot of people who don't want to hear how you might feel about struggling in this place because it's an indication that you're not doing whatever it is you're supposed to do to be, in my case, Portuguese.
And I think also they don't want to hear that you're struggling because they don't want to be struggling. And they want to hear that you're happy and everything is perfect because that means that they can be happy and everything will be perfect for them too.
I'll be brave, Liz, and I'll tell you today, I really don't like sardines. My life is built in Portugal right now. The closest people, some of the closest people that I have in my life are in Portugal. My home is in Portugal. We have a life there, right? I don't like sardines because they're too bony and they're too fishy. They just don't taste good to me. And I don't know why that gets on the nerves of so many other expats. Because I sit there and I can say that to Portuguese people and say, hey man, can I buy you your next plate of sardines? Can we go out to eat fish together? You order the sardines, I'll order the sea bass, right? And I'm going to be so happy when you're happy eating those sardines. I'm not going to eat them because I don't like them. And it's not some kind of statement about the quality of this country or the people that live in it. It's just a case of saying, I am from a different place. I spent 30-something years of my life in another place for me to end up being who I am.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like moving to this country means that I need to abandon all of that and somehow become a guy named Joao who loves eating sardines and going fishing and moving very slowly. And that's not what's happened. I'm still a South African guy that's now living here, and that's what I'm bringing to the table in terms of the diversity that I offer, in terms of perspective, in terms of relationships that I have with people there, in terms of how I can help others, in terms of what it is that I might experience for myself. And I think that's such a tough thing for so many people to go through. especially people who are struggling, because they have this belief that if they hold their breath long enough, they can become the nationality of the place where they're living.
Yeah, it's true.
It makes no sense. I mean, there's some things that I look at and the people of Portugal are in admiration of certain things in other countries because other countries do some things better than Portugal. Portugal does some things better than other countries.
Of course.
But then the thing is that the person from that country will make reasons, will make excuses and bring up stories about how that country is crap because they don't want Portuguese people to feel bad about something that they're not particularly good at.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm saying too much and I'm instigating too much, but I believe very strongly in that.
All right, last section today, we are going to do a new kind of Would You Rather. And this Would You Rather is going to be about mistakes that we've made. So instead of choosing countries, we are Would You Rather with scenarios, and it's mistakes. So would you rather show up in a new country without speaking the language, but with a job sorted? Or would you rather show up in a new country without a job, but you speak the language?
So guaranteed job, don't
No
have the
language.
language, or have the language, no guaranteed job.
Correct.
I think having a job without knowing the language is your better shot.
Me too, only because I went through the situation in Australia where I had the language and I didn't have the job, and I struggled.
Well, it's about like having a platform, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got that platform, you know that there's money coming in, you've got some level of stability and routine, you've got work colleagues, that's a big source of social connection.
Yeah.
You feel safe, you're in a better place. And then from there, I mean, would you rather basically learn the language or look for a job?
Yeah.
And I think learning the language might take longer, but it's probably less stress
I think
if you
so
know
too.
that's taken care of. Okay, so we agree.
All right. Would you rather get to a country and find out that there's no Uber or find out that there's no Amazon? And I'm going first, and I will happily say no Amazon, because when I first lived in Kenya with no Uber and you were having to haggle over taxis and beg someone to take you and then get charged 10 times more than a local gets charged, it was so hard. And now you go to Kenya, you order your Uber, and you don't have to think about it. They will show up when they say they're going to show up. They will take you to the destination. You can watch the map the whole way. You know that you're going in the right direction. And that peace of mind to me, it's amazing. And I will happily go without buying things on the internet in order to have that.
No, I would agree with you. I'm in the same boat as you. I will say this is just a shout out to the people who used to go to India before Uber. My goodness. It's similar to what you would have experienced in Kenya of needing to haggle,
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But the kind of rejection you get from auto drivers, tuk-tuk drivers in India, when you would go up to them and say, look, I want to go to this place, and the response they would give somehow hurt more than any other rejection you would get in your life. It was so brutal. They would sometimes not even look at you. You would say, oh, I want to go to MG Road. And they would just look into the air until you walked away in defeat and shame. It was so hard. Like in retrospect, again, thankfully, I'm not needing to do that anymore because of Uber and because times have moved on. But really, I think it was one of the great victories of technology for people not needing to deal with that level of treatment. So absolutely, I will take Uber every day of the week.
All right. Would you rather live in a perfect place where you have to pretend to be perfect all the time, or live in a deeply flawed and dangerous place where you can be yourself?
I'm South African. We are living in a deeply flawed place full of deeply flawed people, all of us, in a deeply flawed government with crazy stuff happening left, right, and center. And I don't know if anyone regrets that. And I would take living in a difficult place with flawed people anytime. I think it's the best place to be. I would choose it if that was what I needed to do, because I think that in those places and in those situations and those scenarios, people being who they are is really what makes a place colorful. It's what makes a place warm. It's what makes a place interesting.
Exactly. I think going to a perfect, quote unquote, perfect place would be interesting for a day. And I don't even think I would last a day. I don't think I could pretend to be perfect long enough to not be kicked out.
Yeah, we've been to those places. There's plenty of them in mainland Europe. You go, you go to a restaurant, everything is exactly the way that it should be, and the food doesn't taste right. When you go to Argentina and a man brings out some biscuits, some cookies that his grandmother made the day before from the lounge where they were watching TV and charges you $1.50 for 25 of them.
Those are the best cookies.
Those are the best cookies. The place where you get tacos and there's gravy on the walls, that's where the best tacos are. That's how it works, No, so another easy question for me.
All right, last one, and I think this will be easy too, but we have to ask. Would you rather have to come home because it didn't work out, or wonder what it would have been like if you had gone?
Deep and poignant. What is your answer? What do you say?
My answer is definitely you have to come home because it didn't work out. Because for me, that curiosity of what would it have been like, I would never stop asking myself that question. I would drive myself crazy. I would so much rather go somewhere and hate it and then leave than always wonder what would have happened if I went. I don't think I could handle that.
No, I agree with you. I'm the same. I'm option number one. I would rather fail and then come back home than sit at home and wonder what life would have been if I ever went. For people who are interested, I did fail after going to Dubai and India. And I came back home, and after having come back home, I realized that I actually couldn't stay. And it took me many years to get the resources and the situations in line and in place for me to try again. But I did, and I had no regrets over it. And I feel like that might still come back to play a role in my life going forward, of trying new things further and bigger and more different, and there being potential for those things to not work and for me to need to regress in some way. But I've also spent a lot of time living a life where I knew that I wasn't where I was supposed to be, and I knew that I wasn't the person who I wanted to be. And I wasn't that person because I hadn't taken that step. And not having taken that step, despite there being a high likelihood of failure, was worse than failing. The failure is brutal. It's like a knife in your heart. It's like a slap in the face, right? And then there's the shame afterwards. But when you sit there wondering what your life could be or should be, or whether it wouldn't feel this way if you tried, that is slowly suffocating. And that's not the way anyone should have to live. Yeah, I think you need to take the risk. You need to try. Even if you fail, no one's judging you. They didn't even try. You'll laugh about it. I promise you'll laugh about it. If you don't laugh about it, you'll at least look back on it as being one of the great adventures of your life. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us this week. We talked about our biggest mistakes as expats. There were thousands that we haven't told you about yet. And it was really fun to do that. We want to say thank you so much to Nina for sharing with us. That's really such a deep and insightful perspective that she shared, and we really appreciated that. So if you have anything else that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know what's going on with you and what you might have experienced. You can reach out to us on Instagram at expatslisten, or you can send us an email at expatslisten@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And until we speak again, have a good week. Goodbye.